I came to accents and dialects through the audiobook narration work. And basically, what I wanted was to have an arsenal of these things to work with in case a project came along, so I didn't have to, play catch up the whole way. Um, Now, along that, um, I was trying to figure out what the best strategy was to get the essence of a character down, or the essence of an accent down. Um, and one of the things that comes up from time to time that is tricky is, well, how thorough does one need to be in order to get the job done? And what does one study? I was wondering for yourself, because it seems like you really come at this from a heart center and from an experience center, as opposed to again, sort of a tweezer and a microscope center. And so I see you sort of being like, Metza, Metza, Metza. What did there was a lot of experience that you had that led up to this. Um, what sort of passion continues to guide you through this? How does that interface with what your students are looking for and what they want to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, those are really great observations, and it's a really good question. I'd say to sort of go back to why I was mezzo mezzo, as you were saying, is because I do think I am probably more, leading with my heart in terms of my understanding of whatever the field of study is, or whatever the object of the study is. So if it's a specific dialect or specific language, because I think the idea is you can't really separate language from people,
Mm,
which is what I think a lot of linguists, especially the formal theoretical linguists who are more in that abstract sort of realm, kind of try to do, which there's a reason for that, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, you really can't, because language is based in context, right? People use language for all sorts of communicative needs. And some of them are more emotional, and some of them are much more specific to other types of interaction. So as a sociolinguist that's really interested in language and identity and community building and how people take stances and orient to other people or to ideas or to themselves or to the language itself, you really can't separate the idea of the social, right?
mm, mhm,
But then
mhm,
I was kind of going back and forth with this because I still would say that there is a certain, there's a methodology to that, and there's a certain amount of rigor that you can't you can't just anecdotally describe everything, but you have to have a sort of theoretical underlining that too. But so that was just to address that a little bit. But in terms of students, I mean, it's in that same vein of what we were just saying, and what you were actually mentioning earlier is that language is constantly changing, right? As you mentioned, speakers of dialects, whether it's Appalachian varieties or Appalachian, I know that's sort of controversial, um, but or northeastern varieties of U.S. English, or the different dialects of other languages, and completely, there are certain features that are more prone to change generationally. Depending on the dialect, you have more gender-based differences, you have specific regions, and there's lots of context with other languages. That's how a lot of the varieties of US English have kind of emerged over time, is because of contact with different types of English. I mean, in terms of Appalachian, for example, since you mentioned it, lots of Scots Irish, right? So that's why you have the
mm,
a prefix in a hunting. A hunting we will go, right? That's from the speakers of those languages that settled there, and then of course you have these different dialectal regions which have transitional areas, in part because of the settlement of different peoples of completely different languages or specific varieties of languages. And that can be sustained if the community is more or less intact, but then you're going to have different influences. And I liked how you said it, when people receive new information, because that's really what language is. It's a type of information. It's both sort of knowledge, but then also cultural, right? And you can also argue what's the difference between culture and knowledge or thought, and other linguists have talked about that in greater
mm,
detail.
mhm,
So when I teach classes, I've taught cross-cultural communication, language, ethnicity, and race is a course I'll be teaching in the fall,
mm,
and
mhm,
other related classes. I always emphasize that no group is a monolith, right? We tend to overgeneralized because it's easy, because it makes it more, well, it simplifies it, right? Because how do you talk about Appalachian English? Well, are you talking about the Appalachian English that's spoken in West Virginia as opposed to, parts of Kentucky or these other places that have maybe marginal, in parts of Southern Ohio, they have, influence of Appalachian English and so on.
Hmm.
But they're all going to be different. And, the older generations are going to maintain certain things and so on and so forth. So how do you understand that ultimately there's this sort of constant tension between the individual and then the larger community?